What is going on, guys? Here today to talk a little bit more Detroit Tigers spring training. It's been a little while since I've been back on here. Some things to discuss with the Detroit Tigers. It's been a couple weeks now into spring training. There's about 2 weeks left. April 6th is opening day, so there's about like 18 days left, so 2 weeks and some change. So let's jump right on into it. And let's jump into my favorite topic to talk about, the Detroit Tigers bullpen. And my goodness, it's been a dumpster fire so far. I know when I came on here earlier to talk about the spring training preview, I was talking about how I liked some of the depth they got. Zide, Alex Wilson, Brezzolani, Blaine Hardy. You had some other guys in there, Pekonen and Tim Melville, and I thought there was a chance that it was going to be better. Soria coming off a year where I don't think he wasn't fully healthy with the Tigers. Now Nathan looking to prove himself, and so far the bullpen's been it's been a dumpster fire. Joe Nathan has looked absolutely. Let's start with him. Joe Nathan, after coming off a year where he was absolutely god-awful, he kind of straightened it out in the second half. He had a 3.70 ERA in the second half of last year. But for a guy who signed a 2-year deal worth $20 million, had a rocky year, didn't make good comments last year, was not liked by the fans, was getting booed. He got booed off the mound in Lakeland, Florida already once this year. He had at 2/3 of an inning where he allowed 4 earned runs. He's only had, I think, 2 innings so far all year where he hasn't allowed a run coming out there. He's looked absolutely terrible. And I think there was a legit shot that if Joe Nathan comes into this season, because he's going to be on the roster come opening day. They're not going to cut this guy in spring training. No shot. Not making $10 million. But I think there is a shot come opening day. If Nathan goes out there for the first month and gets lit up yet again, they have to let him go. This is kind of like when Valverde came back, after the Tigers didn't re-sign him, but they did that closer by committee crap because Bruce Rendon wasn't ready, so they had Phil Koch and Joaquin Benoit and whatever. They're just a bunch of cluster of guys. And then after Phil Koch blew the save on opening day in 2013 in Minnesota, then they brought back Valverde, and, he was only there for like a month and a half because, he saved his first 5 games, and then he was, awful. I honestly think there's a situation where this might be the same thing with Joe Nathan. If he comes out in the first month of the season and he looks absolutely awful, then I think the Tigers are going to have no choice but to eat the money and get rid of him or demote him to a lesser role in the bullpen. But you think Nathan, a guy who's been a closer, his entire career, or pretty much, except for when he was a starter with the Giants for a little bit there in his early goings, but a guy who's been closing out ball games his entire career, do you think he's going to want to take a lesser role in the bullpen? Or, if he knows he's going to be done, the Tigers outright release him? Back a few years ago, when the Tigers released Gary Sheffield, he was owed like $11 million. And they cut him with that much remaining. If they could cut Gary Sheffield, a guy right around the same age as Joe Nathan, not nearly as good as he was, bad contract, they could eat the $10 million and cut Nathan because they have no choice. This guy, you typically, when you have a bad season at 39 and, your numbers were you look at the sabermetric numbers, his home run to fly ball ratio, his K rate. If you look at that going into the last year, there was like some signs like, hey, man, this guy might start to be declining. He's getting lucky. And then the luck starts to run out and you see what happened last year. You got all these telltale signs. You can't keep putting him out there to get blown up. You can't keep putting him out there and jeopardizing wins early on in the year because, you're giving all this guy, giving him $10 million guaranteed money. But at the end of the day, it's about winning ball games. And you're going to have to find the right mix to find a closer if Joe Nathan can't go out there. Now, I hope he goes out there, and I hope this is just an anomaly, but it's not likely a guy who's 40 almost, who had a terrible age 39 season is going to come back, straighten out his numbers and be better than he was last year when he's already getting lit up again in spring training and his fastball velocity is down. Now, I know it's spring training and guys are out there tinkering and all that other stuff, but on the gun, he was only hit 89 and 91. And his slider, from what scouts have said, have looked extremely flat. Something he didn't get a lot of swings and misses on last year. So, I think there is a legit possibility if he comes out the first month of April and he looks terrible. I honestly think the Tigers, there's a shot they might get rid of him because you got the safety net in Soria. You got Bruce Rendon coming back, who's looked pretty good so far. That's one thing I also wanted to touch on. Rendon made his spring training debut, and he came out throwing over 100. The slider looked good from what I heard. The changeup, secondary stuff looks good. All the bullpen catchers that have caught him have said, he looks good. Ball's coming out free and easy. So that's good. Now we just need this guy to pitch 65 innings of healthy baseball. Jabba Chamberlain has come out and done his job so far. And you got a safety net with Jabba. That was why I like that Jabba sign, because if you cut Nathan, and Soria moves up, and then Rendon moves up, and then you got Jabba, you got some depth there. But you can't keep letting this guy go out there with a terrible age 39 season, hope he's going to get better at age 40 season, because it just doesn't happen. You got the telltale numbers saying that he was kind of a flukish year slash good year, and that he's just really not good. You bought a bad one. You got a lemon. Sorry, guys. It's Jared Washburn 2.0. Except he didn't trade Luke French and some scrubs for him. But nonetheless, looking at the rest of the bullpen, I'm glad Bruce Rendon's coming, looking good so far. Al Albuquerque's done decent work. But the left side of the bullpen's kind of meh so far. Tom Grzelcyk, mind you, this is like 4 inning sample sizes, but he hasn't looked the sharpest. Zide has looked terrible. That guy, coming off, when the Tigers signed him from the Astros, because he had two broken toes or 2 broken feet or whatever it was last year. So it was terrible. But that guy is making a bid not to even come close to making the major league roster, because I've watched him pitch a couple times this spring, and he's god awful both times I've saw Zide pitch. Alex Wilson, he was a guy that was supposed to vie for a spot in the bullpen. He was a part of that Rick Porcello trade. Yeah, no shot. That guy, if he's not in Toledo, it'll be extremely surprising because he has looked terrible. One guy, though, I will praise is Tim Melville. So far in 4 innings, the guy's only allowed 1 earned run, struck out 2, hasn't walked anyone, and he pounds the strike zone. I really like what this guy has. I think he is a sleeper. Tim Melville, if he keeps pitching well, to maybe potentially, get a promotion up to AAA, or, keep an eye out for him, say, Bruce Rendon needs some extra time in AAA to get some reps in, or he's not going to be ready opening day. Watch out for Tim Melville to maybe have a temporary spot coming north with the big club, be on the opening day roster. It happens every year. You get that one guy that, out of camp no one's heard about, and, he makes a spot in the bullpen. And I think Tim Melville is a guy that, if say Rendon needs some more time, or, they need an extra righty, I think he's going to be in AAA this year. And, he might come up and be a viable reliever from the right side for the Tigers. I really like what they got in Tim Melville. I like his delivery. I like how he pounds the strike zone. He's not a guy that's overpowering, but he throws strikes, and I like that. So I've liked what I've saw out of him so far. Let's move on to the rest of the pitching staff. Justin Verlander has looked really, really good so far this spring. He's only had 1 bad start, which was his last time out. Other than that, he's looked really good. And even though he had, he gave up, I think, 3 or 4 runs his last start. I think it was against the Astros, I want to say. He still said, he had some positives to take away from the game. He felt good. He thought his fastball command was good. He liked the way his secondary pitches were working. It's spring training. You can't put too much emphasis on these numbers. So, I don't want you guys, to think I'm playing doomsday here, talking about guys like Nathan. I'm talking, the reason why I put a lot of stock in what Nathan's doing is because it's prior history of what he did last year. So that's one reason why I'm kind of putting some emphasis on his numbers. But JV so far, from what people have said, is curve. They've yet to have a game of his on TV, and it's kind of bummed me out. But JV, from what people have said, the fastball command has looked better. The secondary stuff has looked as good as it's looked in a couple of years. And up until last start, his first couple of starts, he's looked really, really good. The hits have been down a little bit. He gave up a couple of home runs. It was against the Nationals, I'm pretty sure is what it was. He gave up a couple of home runs, and that was it. So, 1 bad start, whoop-de-doo. Next start would be one you want to watch a little bit more closer, because he's probably going to get 5-6 innings. Then Anibal Sanchez went today against the Nationals, and he went 5 awesome innings. I think he struck out 4 or 5, only gave up 2 hits, so he's looked good so far. David Price got rocked 1 start, but he's looked pretty good so far this spring. Shane Green, he's been kind of hit or miss. His first start out, he got rocked. Second start out was a bit better. Third start out, he pitched 3 perfect innings, and then yesterday he gave up a couple of runs to the Pirates in 4 innings. But man, watching Shane Green, I finally got to watch him pitch in Tigers uniform because the game was broadcast against Pirates last night. And my God, that little cutter slider he throws is just absolutely filthy. And that sinker he has, it's filthy. It is filthy. Ask Jose Tabata about how good Shane Green's sinker is, because Shane Green threw a sinker last night. And I mean, his sinker is heavier than Rick Porcello's, and Rick Porcello threw a great sinker. I'm telling you, that ball was diving so hard, Tabata went to hit it, barely nicked it, and blasted it into his foot. He ended up having to leave the game. I mean, he throws a bowling ball sinker. And with that little cutter slider thing, because he throws a cutter and a slider, oh my goodness, Shane Green, his stuff, he's kind of Doug Fister-esque. You know, his pitches don't move as much as Doug Fister's, but everything he throws moves. His sinker, you know, really dark, like I said, bowling ball, heavy sinker. His cutter, you know, not as hard as the slider, but it's got a nice little break to it. His slider is wipeout worthy. You know, when he cranks up that fastball, he can get up there 93, 94. The changeup is still a developing pitch. But, man, even though he gave up a couple of home run and a couple of runs, I liked what I saw out of Shane Green. My goodness, that slider – and that sinker is pretty filthy. So I like that so far. Kyle Obstein, you know, he's started a couple of games so far too. So he's looked. I guess he's looked all right. But mainly the main guys, you know, JV Verlander or JV Price, Green, Sanchez. You know, they've looked good. Simone hasn't looked too bad either. I got to watch him throw a game, and he's another guy, man. You know, I kind of underrated Simone or Simon stuff. I got to quit calling him Simone. His name is Simon. It's Alfredo Simon. You know, I kind of underrated what Simon can do. You know, I had him as a fantasy owner last year, and I had him for half a season, so I watched quite a few of his starts. But I stopped watching in the second half because I dropped him because he was terrible. But man, he's another guy. He's got this little eephus pitch he's been screwing with in spring that he's got a couple of guys with, and they asked him why he throws it, and he says because he said it's hard to hit. So I mean, he's been dicking around with that. He's another guy good mid-90s fastball, can crank it up there. Everything he throws moves. So he's looked pretty good so far this spring. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do. Moving on to the offensive side, the Tigers, they've been kind of a weird club so far. You know, they've blown out the Orioles quite a few times. They've blown out the Braves. I mean, the Tigers have had some big wins so far. I mean, spring training, you know, it is what it is. I think they're actually on a 6-game losing streak right now, the Tigers are. But Ghost and Kinsler have looked outstanding. I've watched a couple of Tigers games. I think I've watched 6 or 7 Tigers spring training games so far this year. And Anthony Ghost, man, that kid can cover so much ground in center, and a guy that has had a lot of problems in his career getting on base. Now, mind you, this is spring training. Take this with a grain of salt. I want to stress this because I remember a couple of years back, Ryan Rayburn hit like 7 home runs in spring training, and the dude hit fucking 1 the entire season. That was it. He was terrible. Everyone was like, oh, he's going to have a huge breakout year, blah, blah, blah. And he was awful. But so far, Anthony Ghost, man, has had some extra base pop. I mean, a lot of that has to do with his speed, you know. But, I mean, he's hitting the balls in the gaps. He's, walked a little bit more. I mean, he's getting on base. He's stealing. And this kid is fast. He is so fast. I mean, Brad Ausmus, every time I've watched the Tigers game where Anthony Ghost is started and he's gotten on base, Brad Ausmus has let this kid steal second and third almost every single time he's gotten on. I mean, it's stupid how fast he is. I mean, he is going to bring, if this kid can keep that gap-to-gap swing, like, yes, he's not going to be a guy that hits out. But if he can keep that gap-to-gap swing, bring the walk rate up a little bit from what he's been in his career, keep bringing down strikeouts a little bit, just get on base at like a 320 clip. That's not even league average. Just get on base at a 320 clip. My God, the Tigers got something special there in the bottom part of their order with Anthony Ghost because he is fast. He is a game changer on the base paths. He can steal when everyone knows he's going. He's really good in the outfield, and the way he's been hitting the gaps this year is actually he's had some extra base pop. He's destroying it right now. He's great, and Ian Kinsler too. He's had a couple of home runs already, a lot of extra base pop. He's got like 5 or 6 doubles already in his couple of games. So, I mean, he's looked really good. JD Martinez is another guy. He's looking awesome. And this is the Tigers lineup, too. You got all this extra base pop so far from Kinsler and Ghost and JD. Cespedes has had a couple of injuries. And don't look too much into the Cespedes injuries. A lot of his injuries are, these guys are only a couple weeks into spring. They're taking hacks every single day. They're getting used to playing, a whole ball game out there on the field, swinging. little backs and aches and pains going to keep up. And these guys, would play through those kind of injuries in the season. In spring, they're going to come out to get a rest for a couple of days. Like Kinsler got taken out of the lineup for a couple of days. And Iglesias, he slid into a base wrong, and then he got crushed by a line drive by JD Martinez and BP. So he's missed a couple of games already. So, but these injuries that, Cespedes had or Kinsler had, if this was a regular season, they may miss a game or they'll probably just play through it, But right now, with being spring training, you have the luxury of sitting these guys down and letting them rest it and, not further hurting them, because they're trying to play through the pain. So don't look anything into that. But Cespedes, he has a couple of home runs this spring. He has a grand slam was one of them. He's shown some extra base pop. JD Martinez has shown a lot of extra base pop. Ghost has looked good. Iglesias, has looked good defensively so far. The stick has still been kind of meh, but I still like what, at least you have him on the field. Rajai Davis hasn't looked too bad. So I like and this is with a lineup without Miggy or Vmart in it yet, and you're still getting all this extra base power. So I like how this is going to show the depth once you get the big boys back in there. That's nice, the surrounding pieces around it. It's going to be a nice lineup. So and Miggy and Vmart are actually scheduled, or not scheduled, but they think that it could be next week or maybe even late this week that Miggy or Vmart could be back in the lineup. So great, great news. Means they'll probably both be ready by opening day. Which brings me to my last topic, the bench. The whole one big storyline is does Brad Ausmus bring up both Romine and Hernan Perez? And the answer is hell no. You need to cut Andrew Romine. I am sorry. Hernan Perez so far this spring has played the outfield. He has played second, and he has played short. And he has done a damn good job in the outfield. He's made some good diving catches. I've saw a couple of his catches so far. And you know what the kid can do with he's got a great glove up the middle. He's got good range, a good arm. You know what he can do up the middle. And I think he's a better hitter than Romine. Now, Romine, I think he might be, a little bit more dependable. He's going to be the guy. He's kind of like Johnny Peralta, where not a shit ton of range, but he makes every basic play. He's just that guy. Where Hernan Perez, I saw him, especially when he first came up, he's got such good range, and he's got a good arm that he tries to overdo it. He tries to get the balls he can't get to, or he rushes it and he makes stupid errors. But he's got that flashiness about him. But I think Hernan Perez is a better hitter. And he's going to give you – he's a more viable option coming off the bench. He can help you in the outfield, and he can help you in the infield. He's got to be your new DK Brawler. Simple as that. And Andrew Romine, he can't play the outfield, and he's not a good hitter. He was pretty much – you were forced to use him all last year because of Iglesias was hurt. And Eugenio Suarez, he had a couple of those home runs right off the bat, and then he was shit the rest of the year. With no Suarez now – you're forced, your hand is forced. And I think if they bring up both Romine and Perez and leave Tyler Collins down in AAA, that is the dumbest thing they could. You need Perez simply for the fact because he can play infield and outfield. He's going to be a guy, defensive replacement. You can use him anywhere. Collins is going to be the guy to where, you need a left-handed bat with some pop in later innings of the games, or, you need to give a guy a blow and you need someone with some left-handed pop. That's fine. If you have Perez and Andrew Romine both on the bench and that's it, you got no pop on there. You got, two defensive specialists. You need that kind of Matt Stairs-esque kind of guy that's going to go out and, give you the opportunity to run into one coming off the bench. And Tyler Collins is going to provide you that, and he showed that last year. There was a home run, his first major league home run ever was in Cleveland. Pinch hit home run off a tough righty and knocked that clear into center field at Progressive. That is what you need. And if you got to choose between Perez and Romine, it's got to be Perez because of his ability to play the outfield and the infield, and he's played them both extremely well so far. And you need Collins because you need some kind of pop off the bench. You have to. You have to have that because your bench depth isn't that good. So you got to Andrew Romine very much longer. I don't think there's a shot that he makes the club big club. I think the bench has got to be Collins and Perez, Rajai Davis, Anthony Ghost. Those guys will all play a little bit because Ghost and Davis, they'll flip-flop between lefties and righties because Davis can't hit right-handers to save his life. And Ghost, get more playing time against lefties too. So I think that's what it is. So far, wrap this all up. Nathan is on a short leash. I just, the way he's looked, he's just been terrible. Going to be 40. I don't see this guy getting better. I just progressively see him getting worse. Fastball velo's falling again. He's getting rocked in spring. I'm sorry. There's a shot he might be gone. There is in the first month if he keeps getting rocked. You know, the bullpen as a whole still look kind of crappy. Zides look bad. Grizzolani's look bad. Hardy's look bad. But I do like Tim Melville. Glad to see Bruce Rendon's coming back throwing hard. Rotation has looked good so far. You know, each one of these guys had a little bit of problems. Don't matter. Spring training, getting their reps in. But overall, looking good. Kinsler Ghost looking awesome. Martinez looking awesome. Cespedes, can't wait to watch him. Can't wait to see him throw out some runners. And V-Mart Miggy coming back here pretty soon, that it appears. And deuces, Andrew Romine. So that's about it for me. I will be back here when there's some more Tiger stuff to talk about. I'm actually going to come back probably a couple days before opening day and give my predictions once the roster cuts have been made a little bit farther down to where there's more of a definitive, 25-man roster. Because right now, there's still so many guys on the team that it's hard to say, make a prediction video to say, oh, this guy's going to do this guy's going to do this, when this guy could be potentially in AAA. Like I remember one year when I did my Tigers predictions, it was right around this time, and I was talking about Jeff Coburnis was going to be on the team, and they ended up sending him back to the Nationals, and I look like an asshole because I'm like, oh, Coburnis is going to be on the team. This is what he's going to do, and because he was a Rule 5 draft pick from the Nationals, and he wasn't even on there. So I'm going to wait for the roster to be a little bit more definitive, and then I'll make my spring training or my season preview predictions. So that's all I got for you guys today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and have a good one. Go Tigers.